Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the West Hartford Board of Education for Wednesday, February 19th. And would you please call the roll?
Ms. Aronson,
Present.
Mr. Levine,
Here.
Mr. Payson,
Here.
Ms. Polun,
Here.
Dr. Steinberg,
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Here.
Mr. Zdanowitz, Kenya Ferreira,
Here.
Isabella Gom.
Here.
Thank you. And to lead us in the pledge, Kenya Ferreira, please.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And revision to agenda order, I'd like to propose that we swap items 6B1 with 6B2. That is the trauma-informed practices and behavior support. We'll be swapping that with the REACH Alternative High School Program. So that will come later on in the agenda under staff communications and reports. Any other suggested revisions to the agenda order? Okay. If not, we will go to student participation. And I would like to call up future educators of diversity from Holland Conard.
Good evening. My name is Jamal Hines. I am the assistant principal. Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. If there are parents or family members or loved ones here and you'd like to get a photo of the children up here as they present, you're welcome to come around this side of the screen and take some pictures. We'd love to have you up here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jamal Hines. I'm assistant principal at Conard High School. What I wanted to show you briefly is the vision and the mission. As you can see, they're up there, but quickly, I just wanted you to know that our vision and our mission are why we're here. And the next voices you will hear is that vision and is that mission, future educators of diversity.
Hi, my name is Matthew Schatz, and tonight I'm in a grade 11, and I'm going to be speaking to you about what FEOD is really aiming for. So what we're really aiming for is we're trying to let our club members soar, and we're trying to get student-led classes. And we got a lot of first-hand experience with that with Human Rights Day. So we were able to facilitate and educate our underclassmen about what really human rights are and why they are important. And another first-hand experience we got with it was lesson planning. So we really put into a lot of thought, effort, what it really means to be an educator, and that really stuck with me since it was a really important moment, because you don't really think about how a teacher stands up there every day, and they put a lot of time and effort into it. And actually, Trisha and I right here are going to be teaching a class in 2 weeks. And I'm passing it on to her.
Hi, my name is Trisha. I'm in the 11th grade, and this is my first year a part of FOED. And going off of what Matthew said, having the opportunity to step in the shoes of a leader and a teacher is extremely powerful and important. And having the teachers and administrators who give us the opportunity to facilitate classes and to teach classes is extremely important, personally, because you have that chance to get comfortable in the role of a teacher and become the future educator that we are aspiring to be, and having that comfortability is extremely important and powerful to me and to my other colleagues.
Hi, I'm Cleo Ortiz. I'm a senior at Conard High School, and I wanted to talk about how FEOD aims to initiate and support the college application and help give the momentum to our group. And just to give ourselves experience, we do college visits in the spring. We've gone to CCSU, UConn, and newly this year we're going to go to Eastern Connecticut. And we have the Blue Devils Direct grant and with CCSU and college admin that are helping us put our mission and our vision forward. And we have been involved with the Leadership and Diversity Conference at the NEAG School of Education, which gave us a first-hand experience of college students that have more of an outline of what they want to do as an educator. And it gave me first-hand experience and helped me visualize myself as a teacher, whether it be getting my education from either UConn or CCSU, and even further seeing myself back here in West Hartford as an educator. As an educator. And I would like to pass it on to Kenya.
My name is Kenya Ferrer. I'm a senior at Conard High School. So one of the overarching goals of future educators is to bring our students back as staff to the West Hartford public school system. So it's very important to understand that process of becoming a certified leader. And one person in particular that we have to look up to is Henley Solomon, who is also a Board of Education rep. In his past years, he's at Conard as a TA now, subbing. So he went through that process and he knows what it takes. And for us, it's like that's where we aspire to be. Next, we have on the screen for the public viewing our past, present, and future activities. One that has resonated with me personally is the elementary school readathon. I personally want to be an elementary school teacher when I'm older. So being able to have that experience in front of the kids, not only reading to them, but teaching the lesson behind the story, which our books were based on culture and diversity. So having that skill for that profession really means a lot to us. And I will now turn it over to Jules.
Hi, my name is Jules. I am an 11th grader at Hall, and I have been involved with the FEOD club for 2 years. So what I want to talk about is why FEOD is important to me. And basically, one of the things that I've learned while I've been a part of the club is that while teacher diversity shortage is unique to West Hartford, it is not okay within our school system. I have grown up until 10th grade. I did not have a teacher of color, and I never knew what it was like to be in a classroom with a teacher of color. And even then, it was my French teacher, and I never really established that connection with him. And being a part of FEOD, I established a connection with Dr. White, and being able to establish that connection let me bond with the community, not only of my peers, but with my teachers as well. And I am really thankful for that experience.
Hi, I'm Lillian Black. I'm a senior at Hall High School, and this is my second year at FEOD. The reason why I love this club so much is because it gives me an outlet where I can speak freely about my ideas about issues with race in the education system and disparities with that. And it gives me an outlet where I can feel like I'm not speaking for my whole race or just people of color. Because I feel like when things like this are brought up in my classes, which are not diverse classes, and I feel like I'm the only person of color or one of very few, especially in my AP and honors classes, I feel like I am speaking for more than just me, and it can be very uncomfortable. So this club gives me a nice outlet for that. An event that we've done at FEOD is a movie night. We watched The Hate U Give, and that kind of started this whole conversation where we were talking about not just issues with race in education, but also just in society as a whole. And that was one of our most deepest conversations, and we were speaking all of our truths, and we were able to bounce off of each other, and we were able to understand where we were all coming from. So, yeah, pass it on to Bridget.
Hi, my name is Bridget, and I'm a senior at Hall. And I love this club because even though I'm white, I'm able to connect with everybody, and we get to become allies for everyone around us, not just in the school, but in the real world. And we get to talk about issues that occur in school and the real world. And we don't just talk about them, we make the change. And you learn a lot of things in this club on how to actually implement change into the world and not just talk about it. And thank God that I've had this experience because it's really made my high school career, and I'm going to be bringing these skills into college next year when I go to school in Chicago.
Great. First, I'd like to thank our district. We are a phenomenal district that has truly been committed to supporting this program, and we cannot thank you enough. I cannot thank my scholars enough for having that vision and follow through, and also for the teachers that have donated their time in mentoring and opening their classrooms and allowing those opportunities for our scholars. There's more to do, as you can see, and we will continue doing the work with the hope that we will bring our scholars back home, and they will be the future teachers of West Hartford Public Schools. Thank you.
Wait right there. Don't go anywhere.
Hang out for a bit if you would. Thank you.
I also want to point out, because I think this is the the work that Jamal, Lara, Rosina, but mostly all the kids and the kids that came before this group of kids that are in college now have done to build this organization is probably the thing I'm most proud of from my time as superintendent. And what's great about this is it's not just, okay, we're doing this and we'll see the dividends in 5 years, in 7 years, as these great kids come back and work here and give back to their community. But this is a replicable program that's important nationally, and we've been invited to speak in Chicago at the Dream Deferred Conference to universities and high schools together that will talk about how they can partner with each other for their own future educators of diversity clubs throughout the country. So this is something that is, if we're going to be proud of things in West Hartford, these are the kind of things and these are the kind of people we should be most proud of. So.
Are there questions? Mark?
Not necessarily a question, but a comment. I had the opportunity last year to visit CCSU and speak with Dr. Toro, who's the president of CCSU, and her leadership team. And this topic came up, and I want you to know that from that point of view, they're very impressed with what's going on here in West Hartford and mentioned it specifically. So I had firsthand knowledge of that coming, and I've always known about this program and completely support it. And I just want you to know that the information coming from the other side, they're equally as impressed.
Lorna.
Thank you so very much for the presentation, but more importantly, thank you so much for you and having the personal desire to be a part of this group. Certainly hearing the benefits you're describing that it has in paying off to others, I'm really intrigued in how you're describing how it's paid off for you. And I say that as a parent here in West Hartford, but also as a board member, but also as a woman of color as well, because we certainly know that it's important to believe in self and have confidence in self, and that will play out elsewhere also. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Continue to do what you're doing. We're all very proud of you.
Thank you so much. We're going to move to public comment. This is when we listen to comments on topics of interest to the public. Just as a reminder, board members do not respond to any of the public comments. We sit and listen. Each person who has signed up will have 3 minutes, and when you come up to speak at the podium, please state your name clearly and your address so that we can get that for the minutes. And keep your eye on Cammie over there. She'll raise a yellow card when you have 1 minute left and a red card when your time is up. We reserve this time and indicate that we have 21 minutes per subject matter, which works out to 7 people signed up per subject matter, and that is exactly what we have this evening. Anyone else who comes in and would like to speak, if it's on the same subject matter, we will also have public comment available at the end of the meeting. So moving forward, the first person who signed up, I can't quite read the name. I think it's Catrice Roger? It's a K and an R. I can't quite read it. I'm so sorry. Oh, no worries at all. We'll move on to Marvin Boynes? Same. Okay. Cruising right through. Dr. Joanne Palmer? Right over at this podium, please. And the microphone will already be on, so just state your name and your address. And again, you'll have 3 minutes.
Is this my mic? Okay, thank you. I'm Joanne Palmer. I live here in West Hartford. And all day today, I've been hearing newscasts about the West Hartford Board of Education moving to an 8:30 school opening motion in anticipation of the Connecticut State Department of Education adopting a uniform 8:30 or a later opening time. So I contacted the Connecticut State Department of Education communications officer today, and he stated to me that the Connecticut State Department of Education has no statewide push for a statewide opening time that's later. That the Connecticut State Department of Education requires local boards of education to provide 900 instructional hours and 180 school days. And that Connecticut's 169 autonomous towns determine each town's best interests. So an 8:30 a.m. opening time for all West Hartford schools, in my research, would double the number of school buses needed to transport students to all the schools for this opening time. And currently, it would double the amount of the West Hartford Board of Education transportation budget, which at the current time is $8,501,233. And it would increase it to almost $17 million. Now, based on my daily observations of Conard High School students in my own neighborhood, I see them walking home from Conard as early as noontime. I observe the Conard track teams running through my neighborhood afternoons after school. Conard students have ample time to pursue after-school activities and jobs now with the current schedule. The 8:30 start time from the high school is at an additional cost of $8.5 million is unnecessary and at this time fiscally unwise. So West Hartford taxpayers already pay about 42 mills, and I am here to express my feelings about this because I was originally a West Hartford teacher starting in 1960 at the Elmwood Elementary School. And some 50 years later, I still have lunch with some of my students from that original class. So West Hartford is very special in my heart, and I'm very concerned about this additional amount of $8.5 million.
Next, Chris Torino.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Torino. I live at 17 Wiltshire Lane in West Hartford over by St. Joe's, which is part of my story. I get it about kids needing more sleep. I have a doofy teenager in high school, like many people do. A smart boy, but he likes to stay up very late and sleep very late. But somehow everyone in this room survived getting up early for school. We won 2 world wars. I mean, we can go on and on. I don't know what to say, but here's my personal issue. I have to be at my desk at 8 o'clock, so does my wife. So it's working out pretty well now. So what would be a solution? Well, if you saw the traffic debacle either at KP or especially at Hall High School in the morning where the traffic blocks up everything, contrary to the previous speaker, I think if we had a few more school buses, this would work for my family because then my wife and I wouldn't have to drop off our children. We're within that 2-mile zone or whatever it is, and we have to drive our middle schooler and our high schooler every day. So again, I'm not against, and I'm sure my comments are not original. You guys have been working on this for a long time. I just want to say that it would be impossible to do the 8:30 for us right now without transportation for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Weber.
Hi, my name is Dr. Kelly Weber. I'm a resident of 54 Leonard Road, and I'm a parent of a Hall High School junior. I'm also a licensed clinical psychologist and a professor at the University of Hartford. I've previously spoken to this body in the past regarding my support for later school start times, and I just rise today to speak to reaffirm my support and to express my appreciation to this board for the proposed resolution supporting a statewide change to school start times. One of your agenda items later this evening addresses trauma-informed practices and behavioral support. It's noted in this report that West Hartford Public Schools has seen an increased need for mental health support in its schools, and the CDC is reporting increased rates of mental health disorders among children and adolescents. The science strongly supports later school start times as one proactive strategy that can be part of the effort to improve mental and physical health for our students. I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Next, we have Mary Fleischle.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Mary Fleischle, and I live at 28 Brunswick Avenue in West Hartford. I've spoken to you in the past in support of later school start times. I was really encouraged when West Hartford had the foresight to have the later school start times committee look into the issue and examine the science behind it and the importance for the health of our children for having later school start times, both mental health, physical health, as well as fewer injuries from athletics and fewer accidents. So there's a lot of good reasons to have later start times, and I was so encouraged to see West Hartford yet again leading the change for what's best for our kids when that committee was formed. We were one of the first towns to have all-day kindergarten. It was great to see the Future Educators program West Hartford is putting on. I think West Hartford is well known for having great schools and being committed to doing the best thing for our kids. So I was discouraged when the later school start times fizzled out and was no longer being examined for West Hartford. I'm really hopeful that you'll look at supporting the statewide initiative. I understand that might eliminate some of the concerns with scheduling. I really hope that you can choose the health and safety of our kids over inconveniences to the schedules of adults. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sarah Raskin. Yes.
I'm here really just to take a minute to say thank you. Thank you for continuing to look at this issue. Thank you for taking seriously the health and well-being and safety of our children. Thank you for considering the statewide initiative. But I also just want to take a second to say, I hope that this doesn't mean that you're abandoning efforts here in West Hartford, only because the statewide initiative, as important as it is likely to take many, many years. And as you all know, every year that we delay, every day that we delay, we're harming our children. We're harming the most vulnerable of our children. And so my request to you all is to look at the incredibly wonderful work that the Rethinking School Start Time Committee put together. What an incredible committee. Kudos to everybody who was on that committee. But don't let their work end up in a file cabinet somewhere unused. I urge you to take that committee and make the next step. Create an implementation committee, a committee that includes all stakeholders, all concerns about costs, about transportation, about athletics, about extracurriculars, but also about the mental health, academics, which should come first, of our students, and all the other issues, sports injuries, car accidents. Another article just came out this week about car accidents related to school start times. I firmly believe that West Hartford is an amazing place. I do not believe that it is the most complicated town in the world. And so I believe that there is a solution. It may not be a perfect solution, but I think it's worth putting together a committee of stakeholders to look and see what the best possible solution could be. And then you all can vote it down if it turns out to not be an effective one. But I don't believe anybody yet has tried to find that best of all possible solutions. So again, I mostly just want to thank you, each and every one of you, for being willing to look at this. I am so happy that you're thinking about supporting a statewide initiative, but I urge you to not give up on West Hartford. Thank you.
Thank you. We have room for 2 more public comments if there are others who wish to speak now.
Hi, I'm Abigail Adams. I've been a resident of West Hartford since 1996. I actually may be the only person in this room who has directly experienced the later high school start times of the 70s and early 80s. And I've raised 2 high school students with the earlier high school start times in this town. And I have a middle schooler who'll be entering high school next year. And I'm re-upping my foster parent license, so I may be raising still more future high school students, maybe from a rocking chair. So I'm also a university professor at CCSU, so I've worked with, for decades, with older teens in their early undergraduate years, and I'm probably not alone in this room of understanding the degree to which many of us are dealing with youngsters suffering from anxiety and depression. And so I just want to hold up. I want to thank everyone in this room. I want to thank you all. I want to thank all the Board of Education members who've considered this issue with a lot of care. I also want to hold up all working parents, all parents for whom the fact of the matter is all of us are caring for our children, other people's children, ourselves, in an economy that puts very little value on care. We live in a care deficit. That's not what this town does. It's not what this town stands for. So I just want to say I really hear how discombobulating it is for anyone who's finally got something down that seems to work to think of change. I raised my first daughter as a single mother, and those short Wednesdays drove me nuts. But I also hold up the teachers who need that time, okay? I don't want to speak. I raised my 2 high school graduates, had different start times because one went to Watkinson, one went to West Hartford Public Schools. And I just want to say the difference in their mornings, at the half-hour difference was just so, it was just an object lesson in what a half an hour can mean for being able to put in self-care, and how that ability as you're a young person learning to take responsibility for your breakfast, for making your bed, make your bed, for coming back to a room that's ordered that you're going to study in later on. Both of my daughters were athletes. They were involved in other school activities. They academically excelled, and I value those as well, okay? So I just want to hold up that these years are also in our current economy of a care deficit, teaching our children that we want them to value caring for themselves, caring for our community, having our communities hold up that kind of work here. I don't want to just speak from my own experience. I think it probably resonates with a lot of people in this room here. The science, actually, that Dr. Raskin, Sarah, thank you so much, and has brought to our attention over and over again, it's clear. It's just really clear. And it's helped me not come up with more anecdotes to share with you all, but to help me understand why my experiences were what they mattered. And I want that science to make a difference in the experiences of those future and current high school students. So thank you so much for your consideration.
Oh, real quick, before you head back, can you just state your address into the microphone for the record?
Right now, it's 22 Vanderbilt Road, West Hartford.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak right now? We have one more slot open before we go into the rest of the meeting.
Hi, excuse me, Maria Larusso. I live at 93 Meadowbrook Road in West Hartford. I've spoken to the board before about this issue. I'm a professor of human development and family studies at UConn. And it's been a few years now that I've been really impressed with the research on school start times. And so I study children and adolescents' social emotional learning and mental health. And I do a lot of research where we do experimental trials of different programs and strategies and practices in schools. And we get a lot of variation in our effects, but most programs that do work don't have consistent effects. And one of the main issues with that is that implementation of programs that are intended to support child and adolescent well-being are very difficult to implement. The programs cost money. They cost money to train the teachers initially. The materials cost money. You have to keep them up over time. And you also have lots of ways in which implementation doesn't go well. Not all the teachers buy in. A lot of teachers, many schools, many school districts are regularly trying new programs, trying new interventions, doing things at different times. Teachers sometimes refer to it as programitis in schools. So one of the things that I think about with the school start times is the fact that it's a one-time inconvenience, really. Like, you go through the trouble of making it work, but you don't have to retrain teachers. You don't have to, when teachers retire and you get new teachers, you don't have to get those teachers up to date on the program. Or in the end, decide a program isn't working and you try something else. The research for school start times is very consistent in showing that it improves, in particular, adolescent well-being. And it's also a way to, I know in West Hartford, you have all kinds of social emotional learning programs, and you have most recently the collaborative problem solving program. The gradual kind of implementation of that, getting teachers trained, is years in the making and is still happening. School start times is, despite the cost and despite the inconvenience, is the easiest, cheapest, and most reliable thing you can do to improve child well-being in West Hartford.
Okay, thank you. We now move on to unfinished business, and the first item is a motion to accept the resolution supporting a statewide change to school start times. So I'll begin by making the motion. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And I will go ahead and read the resolution. Whereas the West Hartford Board of Education has considered the issue of school start times and established a Rethinking School Start Times Committee comprising parents, teachers, administrators, and students, which met from September 2017 to November 2018. And whereas a substantial body of research has demonstrated that delaying school start times for adolescents is an effective countermeasure to chronic sleep loss and has a wide range of benefits with regard to physical and mental health, safety, and academic achievement. And whereas a district-by-district approach to changing school start times presents complications for inter-district activities as well as for family work schedules. And whereas a statewide approach to start times would ameliorate those issues and provide equity across districts, benefiting all students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the West Hartford Board of Education urges the Connecticut General Assembly to pass legislation requiring schools for students in grades 6 through 12 to begin academic classes no earlier than 8:30 a.m. daily to ensure that every student arrives at school healthy, awake, alert, and ready to learn. Is there discussion on the motion? Mark.
So, there's an old saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We hear the accolades of how West Hartford competes not only against the schools in Connecticut, but how we compete nationally. We don't do that just by happenstance. We do it by great teachers, great students, and a great academic program. That in itself, those accolades that they speak about for West Hartford get echoed throughout the year. It's one of the reasons, your town councilors run on how good our school systems are. They are good. They're great. And we don't really see a need to fix it and yet spend money as well on it. This is a resolution. I mentioned this earlier. There's a time to lead, and then there's a time to follow. And this isn't really the time to lead. We tried to do this once as a board. And I'll give you some background information. Out of the hundreds of emails that we received as a board, 60+%, I think it was 63, 64% were against this. And that was from parents and teachers and students here in West Hartford. We did 2 surveys at Hall and Conard High School. The first one, the kids were overwhelmingly in support of the change. That's because they thought they were going in later and getting out at the same time. Then when the real time changes came in and they did another survey, it was overwhelmingly rejected by the students of both Conard and Hall at 75% at each school. So as board members, we have to listen. School buses were going to increase and outstandingly too much for us. There's been an increase in mental health issues, and they try to blame this on the sleep deprivation. Well, we always went to school early. We have been going to school earlier. There are some schools out there, the private schools, that go later. And yet we still have been successful, and yet this town has been successful. There was a research study that was done here about the time changes. They did AP Physics first period, AP Physics fifth period. I think it was AP Physics. I hope I'm right. One of the hardest classes there were in West Hartford. And there was absolutely not a measurable difference between first period and fifth period, where the kids are up and ready as supposedly. So there was no benefit academically with that research that was done by our town. Now, conveniently, there's a lot of research out there, but the convenient research is the ones that we hear all the time and getting written and emailed about. 2007 was the first time we had cell phones. It's the #1 reason people and kids are up at night with their cell phones in the blue light. No one's talking about that. You want us to legislate parents' responsibilities at home, where I think the parents should have the responsibilities at home and legislate their own households and taking those blue light phones away from them. These are the reasons. This isn't a modern technology, believe it or not. I mean, it's a modern technology. This hasn't been around for years. 2007. So academics, best solution. West Hartford works hard every day at the best solution, and it's proven. We're ranked nationally, as I mentioned earlier. Some say we're harming children. I'd like to see one person up here think that we're harming children by our current school systems. I take offense to that. Absolutely, we don't. We take the safety of our kids at the utmost. We're not up here harming kids. So this resolution I found perplexing because we went through this and we spent a lot of time. We have been on the board the longest as everybody, than anyone here, and we have never done a resolution. It's not something the board does. We have, in the past, leave ideologies at the table and at home. And we were at the best interest of what's in the classroom of the kids. That's what we're concerned about. And we come to this board and we do that. And we kind of leave politics out of it. Yet here, this is politics. 100%. Supporting a statewide initiative to a local representative. So I would like to leave politics out of this. We're not something resolutions don't have any power. Not something that it just brings a topic up again and really opens up kind of the wounds, because we already went through this. We went through a long time of this. We do this on a volunteer basis, and so the administration spent a long time on this, and this comes back up. Town spoke through emails, the kids spoke, and I understand that this is just really, at the end of the day, not going anywhere as far as the state. We've talked about it already as a town, and I just find that we should leave some of these political things where they belong, and keep this board how it has sometimes operated in the past, with the children's best interest and not politics.
Anyone else want to add to the discussion? Rob? Anyone?
Nobody on your side? You can go back and forth. Okay.
Go for it.
For me, I don't have a huge speech about this. Just to reiterate a little bit what Mark said, I'm just a practical guy, and so for the folks that weren't on the board when we went through this most recently in the last year and a half, both sides were very passionate. There were good points on both sides. There was a lot of time spent on this, and at the end of the day, for a variety of reasons, the board chose not to move forward on it. And I think that was a wise decision because the board listened to its community. Instead of listening to a few impassioned people on either side of the issue, my take on it was that the group as a whole were listening to the hundreds of emails and messages that we received on both sides, and that wasn't the right time for the town. There's a couple parallel different arguments going on with this issue. It's real easy to try and just broad brush it and say the science or the cost or what have you. And that's where I feel like, to Mark's point, the politics comes into play, because at the end of the day, we should all just care as board members, I believe, what is in the best interest of the schools and what our community wants. And I felt like when the board decided not to act on making that change, that it had listened to the community and made that decision that this wasn't the time, and that maybe at some point in the future it would be the right time, or maybe it wouldn't, but it wasn't the right time, and the arguments were made. And so, like Mark, I was very perplexed when this came about again, because it is important to realize what the issues were at that time, and if it was a reasonable decision to come back to this. And as Mark said, I just don't, being a practical guy, believe in putting out motions or statements that have no real impact or effect, because as one of the speakers said, and we all know, and we often talk about it, our superintendent does, we're one of 169 fiefdoms in this state, and to get all of them to do anything together is very challenging, which is why I think, rightfully so, the state says that when it comes to education, it's a local initiative. I mean, they can barely pass a budget on time up there, right? So to think that us putting a proclamation out as one of 169 towns is going to be the thing that makes a difference, I think is just political. And the unintended consequence that it has in a small microcosm is what we saw tonight and what we've seen in drips and drabs in emails to the board, where all of a sudden some small fires are being lit on both sides of the issue, and it very quickly could become a much larger thing that I just don't see the timing being right, with us going into the middle of our budget session in the next 2 months. But even after that, it was very clear that the community was divided on this issue, and there was a large vocal segment of the community that did not like what was being presented as options. So again, I just feel that this isn't a good use of board resources or time to make a resolution that has really no ability to affect anything, and that it, to me, just seems to be political, and that there's what I would assume other motivations behind the scenes to hopefully maybe turn it around to where it does become something that this board is debating again at a local issue to change specifically in West Hartford. I would expect that not to happen, but I've been surprised before. So to the board members that weren't here before, don't, listen to what Mark said as far as the feedback we received from the community was tremendous. We had lots of debates about it fiscally and on the policy side, and it was robust, and the board did not act. So I would think the board would stay consistent with that and not act tonight on this, and can potentially open up other avenues that lead to other things that really aren't appropriate. So, that's my take on this motion, and I just can't support it.
Lorna.
First off, I want to say that I always appreciate hearing the opinions of our colleagues, and I think that just reminds us of why we are on the board, and certainly having the interest of our young people at heart and being passionate about that. So I appreciate the differences of opinion, which also brings me to this resolution and the purpose of it, and whether or not to support it or not. what I do know is what the resounding research has stated. And as the resolution states, there was information that has been presented to the board over the course of a long period of time. Information in terms of statistics, data, narrative, observation, all of that. So I certainly do know the science, and the science is irrefutable. I also do know that in terms of the current start times of our students, unfortunately, the start times currently for our high school students and middle school students does not support the science. Those two pieces I do know. In terms of how to implement, in terms of how to make it effective, in terms of all of the administrative pieces and transportation pieces and scholastic pieces, those pieces I cannot say confidently that I do know that. Why? Because we haven't tried it. We haven't done it. And so I think when it comes to making a decision in regard to this resolution, I am in support of it for the reasons as to, again, not only why the science supports it, but most importantly, our young people. And when it comes to our young people do not have any political affiliation. I know that I stand proudly in being a part of this board, advocating for all young people, regardless of what party they may identify with and for. Certainly the information that was presented to us over the course of the past year and a half from the Rethinking the School Start Time Committee was resounding. I want to caution us with how we report on statistics that we collectively have received or read. I think that's something that there may be some room for disagreement, but that's all right. That's all right. I know that over a prolonged period of time, there was a lot of support and some counter in regard to the Rethinking the School Start Time. Certainly in a more concentrated period of time, we heard more of a diversity of opinions and some that were against it as well. So certainly we've heard different opinions, but it's important to recognize all of the information, all of the facts, and in terms of us tabling the decision, the reasons why we tabled it. It was for us to make a decision, a rational decision without distraction. That was the reason why we tabled it. It wasn't a matter of not having confidence in terms of whether to or whether not. Also, I believe that we tabled it because the options that were at play at the time were not ideal. And so I think it's important to differentiate between if we do it versus how we do it. And in terms of where I stand, my conviction is how do we do it? And I collectively respect all of your opinions and views, but certainly want us to remember all of the pieces that play a role in whatever decision we make moving forward in support of all of our young people.
Anyone else for the first time? Sean? Come in.
Hi, I know our community put a lot of time into this, so I wrote something down to make sure that I didn't leave anything out that I wanted to express. So, as our society continues to evolve, it's important that we pause at times to examine the bigger picture, not just of education, but of childhood. And this issue forces us to do that. Our society is changing at a rapid pace. Work culture is changing at a rapid pace, and the experience of childhood is changing at a rapid pace. And these things concern me. Our community engaged in significant research and debate about the issue of adjusting school start times, and intentions were good. They were to support the health of students and to try and ensure that unintended consequences of a change did not end up creating more problems than intended. They were courageous conversations filled with passion and debate and concern because they were rooted in what was best for children and families. That kind of debate is always worth it because our kids and the health of our families are always worth it. It is clear from our vigorous debate that in our town, which has many socioeconomic levels, many different work schedules, many different sports and activity schedules, that making a local change independent of other districts would not necessarily go smoothly. There would be many unintended consequences that would stress our community. And it's important for us to note that when the adults in the community are under stress, that stress trickles down and impacts children. That is not something that can be overlooked, and as a policymaker, that's not something that I overlook. What our community did help clarify, though, is that adjusting school start times for students in grades 6 through 12 can be an important support for student health in today's society. Urging the Connecticut General Assembly to consider an adjustment to school start times statewide will prompt necessary conversations about childhood health. because it will require communities to examine how a change to a school schedule would impact families with different life circumstances. It will require school districts to examine how children are cared for before and after school. It will encourage conversations about building temperatures, lighted fields, and access to sports in a four-season state. And it will encourage employers to consider what they might be able to do to add flexibility to both student and adult work schedules. These are big conversations, but if done strategically, they can open the door for other coordinated changes that are needed or wanted. We have to think strategically. Yes, that will take time, which I understand is a concern for many. But it's time well spent if we want to shift the experience of our children are having in a healthier direction. Societies do not often stop themselves to have big picture conversations. We need to be pushed to do it. That's just human nature. But stopping to consider how we support the long-term health of our children and how our work culture and educational culture impact childhood health is worth it. Our children are worth it. So the questions as we move forward are not about why this won't work or what could go wrong, but rather what would need to shift to support our children's health in this way. There is value in that conversation. If we start there, we may find that we can make other synchronized shifts that don't just help kids, but also help families.
Sean?
Sure, thank you. As a new member of the board and former member of the Rethinking School Start Times Committee, as I mentioned, I was really happy to see the board come back to this topic. The results, in my opinion, were not ideal. I'd rather see us doing something. I didn't think the times presented were ideal. Nothing about this situation is ideal, but I think if we can move together towards the health of our children, that's what's most important. So, I may not have been on the board, but I was in the classroom and on the committee that looked into this for a couple of years ago at this point. So first, I'd like to thank my fellow, and considering that time, I'd like to thank my fellow board members, thank the members of the Rethinking School Start Times Committee for all their hard work. For those in the audience, their information is still available online. I encourage you to go take a look at it. I have some of it that I'll be referencing here. Anything I reference is taken from there and not an extra source that you would not be able to find. So, and lastly, thank you to the local voices that have come and spoke to us, that send us emails. I want to promise you that although there is an impression that we don't read the emails, we do. We may sit very stoically up here and not react to you, but we read the emails, we talk about them when we're allowed to talk about them in front of you, and that's what you get. So we care, and I want the public to know that. So the BOE was tasked with investigating later start times, and I went into this process with an open mind. My only experience with this was that I asked my class to design a t-shirt, and every class was allowed to come up with a different logo. Period 4 came up with a speaker, because they're a very loud class. Period 3 and 2 came up with different food items like goldfish and pretzels, because they like to eat. Period 1 came up with a pillow, because they like to sleep. And I didn't know why. And I asked questions, well, because everybody's tired in the morning. That's just what it is. So I looked at my AP Gov scores, and sure enough, there was a discrepancy. Not that there isn't in other classes, but in that year there was for me. It could just been that group of students, but it brought my attention. So when an email went out asking for people to serve on the Rethinking School Start Times Committee, I went in with an open mind and happy to look at this issue. I didn't have an agenda either way. So I completed site visits to high schools that made the switch years ago, and ones that made the switch recently, and ones that were thinking about making the switch. I listened to students, administrators, teachers, community members that were assembled for me to talk to and gather research to bring back to the committee and form a presentation that would then be presented to the board. And it was a long process, and it was great work. Thank you for all your hard work on that. I know how hard you worked on that, so thank you for assembling all of that data. The majority of the information I received in this year-long investigative process pointed to the clear conclusion that moving start times later at the middle and high school level to 8:30 was a smart move. Why the board did not receive that as a option. I don't know. I wasn't privy to that process. I don't know why 8:30 wasn't like all of the options as opposed to maybe one or none. I learned that in this process that several groups that I probably wouldn't want to argue with agreed. The American Medical Association, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the Centers for Disease Control, the American Academy of Pediatrics. I could go on, but these are groups that I'm probably going to trust. They have reasons for saying what they do, and looking into the data with this committee helped clarify why they said what they did. So all recommended that schools make the switch. How you do that, though, is another area. The dilemma seemed to be that should West Hartford Public Schools do something that maybe parents didn't want to do? So after a survey completed by Hanover Research, surveys online, you can take a look at it, surveyed over 7,000 people, included parents, teachers, and students, we saw that 64% of parents and 71% of students preferred slightly later or much later start times. What their knowledge level while taking this survey, I can't say, but it is information that we took seriously. Teachers, on the other hand, were not so interested. I know this because I was the teacher that presented it to the hall staff. And I told them about this great idea during the faculty meeting, and no go. Not 2 people may be interested. That's about it. So the staff clearly showed that in the data that they were also not interested. I don't have the percentage here, but it's online. So this data has been available for years at this point, and yet the board was still kind of dragging their feet on the issue. I know there was a lot of other issues going on, but for some reason we didn't do anything. So having a motion on this is important, and I think it moves in the right direction. So regarding the negatives, which we also researched, this would include the 20% of families that have little to no flexibility with their schedule. We may have heard from a few of them tonight. I wanted to say that we hear you. The impression that some people try to portray is that board members are oblivious is ridiculous. We read every email, we discuss all the options, we think of the negatives and the positive effects before deciding to act. In the end, I don't think any of us would try to push something through that the community did not want. In this case, we have something that has been objectively proven on multiple levels to be an improvement for students, and the majority of parents and students seem to agree. Lastly, to my fellow board members, our ethic code states that we act within the mindset of putting children first. I implore everybody to look at the data both nationally and locally and see what the experts are saying. There are going to be difficulties, though. As an athletic coach of 20 years, this would obviously be difficult. As somebody who owns a home, this would obviously be difficult. But what is important to me is the health of our children over my home and my schedule. So I hope you'll join me in not only voting for this tonight, but looking into it further. Thank you.
Isabella.
Hi, so I would like to speak briefly on my experience as a student of the West Hartford Public School System. Because we have our exam periods, our midterm exams and our final exams start at 9:30 for 4 days. We have a different schedule where we come in later to take our exams. And I do notice a significant difference in my personal ability to concentrate on a regular school day in the morning and in an exam, which is arguably a more stressful situation at 9:30 in the morning. And so I do personally notice a difference when I am coming to school later. And so I have had some conversations with my peers over the last 2 weeks, and generally, from what I've heard from my peers, the concern in the last round of this discussion last year. One of the major concerns were conflicts with athletics, and when it's a statewide initiative, those conflicts decrease significantly, and so a lot more of my peers were supportive of that. With when it becomes a statewide initiative instead of just our town. And I think that if we have the opportunity to act and support our community's young people and their health and well-being, and if we choose not to, I think that's sending a message to the young people of our community and about how I think that we should do everything within everything that's possible to support the health of the children and young people in our community as full members of our community, because I think that's really important. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll make a brief comment in response to a question that was raised, why now? And why now is because now we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to do what we've been wanting to do, what we know is right based on science, what we know is right for our children, for their mental health, for their physical health, for their safety, for their academic success, and for their happiness. And we were not able to overcome all of the barriers when we talked about this on a district-by-district basis. But with a proposal at the state legislature, we have the opportunity to tell the Connecticut General Assembly, listen, the West Hartford Board of Education supports a statewide approach. We support taking what we know to be the right thing to do and having the districts put that into place to the benefit of students across the state. That's why now is the right time, because now is when the legislature is considering this proposal. Will a statewide approach help overcome every barrier that we identified? I don't think so. It will help overcome some of the barriers, including the issues with scheduling interdistrict activities like sports. And I think that if a statewide proposal were to be adopted and implemented, we could use the collective wisdom and creative thinking of school districts across the state, together with policymakers in the General Assembly and in the State Department of Education, to help us find the right solution that implements this in a way that benefits children in West Hartford and across the state. So I would urge my fellow board members to support the resolution.
Okay. Thanks for letting me say just one more thing. Mainly, it's just wanting to respond to a couple of things Sean said, because you asked, I think, a couple good questions. One of them was, why wasn't 8:30 an option? I actually proposed that. So the reason I know that option wasn't considered is because it was too expensive. The board looked at it. See, the other problem I have with this tonight is that, as you alluded to, and we all know, I think everybody out here knows, or if you're listening, is when you spend over a year discussing something, and we did in multiple meetings, it fleshes out the subject matter. This resolution was brought up at our last meeting, and I mean, just look at all the comments that we're having about it, where you guys want to pass this, which I know you will, but it won't be unanimous. And so again, I don't know what that sends to our state leaders when the town couldn't even send a unanimous resolution. But I think if we had a real serious discussion about this over a longer period of time, maybe that resolution could become unanimous. But it just came up a week or two ago, and here we are voting on it. Where with the later school start times initiative, we spent a long time talking about it. But so 8:30 was an option, Sean. This board majority decided not to move forward with that because they knew it would never pass. Another question you asked, or maybe it was more of a statement, is for some reason the board decided not to do anything. So again, just to kind of respond to that, because I was here, was because the chair of the board at the time tainted it by involving someone off the board in trying to influence things. Obviously not something we want to talk about, but when you make a statement like that, like, well, some reason the board didn't, that was the exact reason. We were going to vote on this a year and 3 months ago in November, and it was kind of being rushed at that point because we were doing, just to give the history of it, because, I mean, we were here, there was a lot of back and forth from the community, both ways, to Lorna's point, and it seemed like the chair and some other forces were trying to spin it that there was an overwhelming majority in favor of this in our town. And so how, as board members, could we not listen to our community when the science, as you all are saying again tonight, is so clear? I don't dispute the science, by the way, but I do believe that we, as elected officials, and it's really the only reason I ran for this position, was because you should listen to the community. It's why I ran. I wanted to understand what went on, and just like you guys, and when you're talking to people in the grocery store or your friends and neighbors, and they're like, what goes on behind the scenes with the board, that I wanted to be able to speak intelligently about it, because quite frankly, it's hard to know because we're all busy. Our superintendent and our senior leadership team do yeoman's work, and it's almost like nobody knows, or they get a lot of negativity because people don't have time in the community. That's another thing that we learned through this process, is that a lot of people would email us, or on a rare times we get a speaker that would come in and say, I really just don't have time to generally be here, but I was passionate about this issue. And it does a disservice to our superintendent and our senior leadership team for, the negativity that they would get for things like this when they obviously worked very hard to provide us the information on this. But the vote didn't happen because the process was tainted, and that there was obvious in October of that year, a turning of the tide. As far as the survey that you cited, it was my understanding that, as Mark stated earlier, was before we had coalesced to options. And once we started focusing on options, that's when the tide started to turn, because the option that the board was choosing was not favorable, because it was supposedly the least expensive option, which that was never fully flushed out, and it was the least damaging to the changing in times to affecting our students and our community. But it wasn't, as you're saying, a very palatable or successful one, so hence it failed. That doesn't mean that at some point in the future that we couldn't, as a local community, come back to this and say, well, we found a way to thread the needle. But there are so many unintended consequences, as you stated. And I'm sorry, it wasn't all athletics. Athletics is the easy one to pick on. I agree that academics is priority number one, but there's so much that goes into academics. Athletics are important to that, but so were the chess club or the other after school programs that would have been impacted by this. And let's not forget about the jobs, guys. A lot of our students have part-time jobs. These are things we talked about over many, 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 many months, and I feel like none of that is really getting a full hearing tonight, because we're just gonna pass this and we're gonna say it's because of the science, and we think that a statewide initiative, which, by the way, and this is an honest question, I'm not trying to poke at anybody, when's the last time the state ever passed something like this, ever? I have no idea. I don't understand that the state has ever done anything in recent memory of this magnitude that I can remember. That's why it's my understanding that school issues have always been a local issue, hence the reason that we exist. Because if we're going to have the state take care of everything, why do we need to be here? And that's what this kind of feels like, is that in one hand we're punting, saying, well, we expect that this initiative that the state has put a press release out is going to turn into something. I certainly believe not in my lifetime. I just don't see it happening. The state is incapable, in my opinion, of doing anything significant to benefit our kids. That's our job. That's our job. That's our superintendent's job. It's our leadership team's job. That's why we do this. That's why I volunteer. I want to make sure that we have enough money in the system that is spent appropriately to give these kids the best education, so that hopefully some of them do want to come back here and teach. But I don't see any of this actually meaning that. This proposal does nothing but smell of politics to me. I'm sorry. It just, that's what it is. Because if we don't think we can pass this on a local level, it's not going to happen. And again, you guys have the votes. So quite frankly, instead of voting for this, if you're so certain that this is an initiative that can hold water, then I encourage you to do it here in West Hartford at a local level, just like some of your supporters came up and said tonight. You guys should have the guts to start this all over again and to move forward with this process and rehash it all out and vote on it and make the change locally. Give them what they want. But hear from everybody. And make sure that you're making an informed decision. This is something that's just done for politics, and it doesn't serve anybody. If you want to help the kids, you want to make your supporters happy, you guys have the votes. You don't need us. You don't need our support on this thing tonight, and you certainly don't need it if you want to pass it locally. So go for it.
So I just want to kind of clarify some things too. You know, they talk about the science. I don't really remember anyone denying the science here on the board when we went through this. We added science, like I talked about the blue light and such, and computer time and things like that, things that are new. But what we also talked about in the science is they like to broad stroke science, and they say high school. And there's a definition out there from 0 to 18 is pediatrics, but not when they're adolescents. The adolescents' development with the science is really 2 to 12. And that was talked about too. So all the science we hang our hat on, I agree, right? But we talk high school times. Again, if you're really concerned about the kids and you really want to do this is a middle school thing. That's where your development is mostly at. There are kids in middle school that have mustache and beards already, you know? So it's at that age group where your development is still really taking place. As they move through their development, their adolescence development through high school, that development is already percentagely done. So if we really want to talk about start times, and you're really concerned about the kids, and I hope you are, is that this not should be a high school thing and broad stroke it. It should be a middle school thing, where it would really affect the kids. And that's where that's where it got into money in the budget. And Amanda, you said something earlier too, and it really resonated with me. You know, you said adults that are stressed trickle down to their children. Man, that is so profound. You know, with the more mental health issues that we have in our school system, that really is, because it really does affect our kids at home. And that is really the crux of how we could really help, is not stressing our parents out so they don't stress their kids out, right? That's something we can do. And I think this is part of that stress. I do. And so I just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you.
I'll just make one note of clarification, and I think we should probably proceed to the vote. Just to clarify, this resolution, as you can see by reading it, does address middle school as well as high school. It does not only address high school. So I just want to make sure that members of the public and all of those who are about to vote recognize that following the science, this does address middle school and high school. The other clarification is really just a note of gratitude, and that's to you, Rob, for bringing up the fact that we all serve on the board to benefit our kids and to try to provide the best environment for our kids to learn and to succeed and be ready for their life. And we're all in this together for that. And we may come from different perspectives. I hope that we do all come from different perspectives. That's how good policy is created. Finally, the last clarification is there are certainly situations where the State Department of Education sets rules that local boards of education need to implement. The most recent example is the new graduation requirements. As we've seen over the last couple of months, we have been developing a plan to implement new graduation requirements which require more credits which require a mastery project. So these are this is a significant change for our high school experience that's gone into effect starting with this year's freshman class. And so it would certainly not be unprecedented for the state to adopt a policy that then needs to be implemented on the local level. And with that, unless there's anybody else who feels need to speak, Kenya, love to hear from you.
Just something that was said earlier that resonated with me was that there's a time to lead and there's a time to follow. I don't understand since when West Hartford Public Schools was a system that follows. Instead, we're the ones that we set examples. We're the ones to lead. And so what message does that send to the youth when you would rather sit back and let someone else make that push, make that change, instead of what message does that send to the representative of our town? I think what message does that send to us, the students? And who this affecting is our future. So our future students going in. And again, that idea of being stagnant, of the Board of Education hasn't done resolutions, or since when has the state of Connecticut voted on something equally, that's all in the past. Our future is to benefit our kids, so that's the switch that's happening today in society. So I think we should just keep that in mind, that we aren't stagnant, we are leaders. Thank you.
All right. Cammie, would you call the roll by name? So I think that'll be easier. I've spoken with some folks who've said they haven't always been able to identify who votes in which way. Thank you. And again, the motion is to accept the resolution. So if you vote yes, then you're voting to accept the resolution. If you vote no, you're voting not to accept the resolution.
Ms. Aronson?
Yes, I vote to continue this conversation at the state level.
Mr. Levine?
I vote to abstain. I can do that.
Mr. Payson?
Yes.
Ms. Polun?
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg?
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Yes.
Mr. Zdanowicz?
No.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the robust conversation. Motion passes. Moving on to the next item, under new business, we have a proposed calendar for the 2021-22 school year. This is a first reading, and the recommendation is that the Board of Education review as a first reading the proposed calendar for the 2021-22 school year. And I'll just remind us all that we've already adopted the calendar for the 2020-21 school year. Thank you.
Okay, so you'll see on page 3 the proposed calendar for 2021-2022. Calendars used to be a controversial topic that would fill a room with speakers, but that was when February vacation tended to be up in the air what we were going to do, and we had a period where we went back and forth, and then the state adopted a uniform calendar for areas, and that's kind of moved away from, although most districts follow a very similar calendar now, and it's basically the one in front of you. The truth is, 2 years from now's calendar, the 2021-2022 year, because of the way the holidays fall, it's actually a pretty simple calendar. There's not a lot of leeway in terms of how long is vacation, how long does this take. This is the recommended. It's a first reading. I will give one caveat. November 2nd is Election Day, and it's a teacher in service day. We've discussed before the difficulty of having teachers in buildings, and the town is asking for more of our buildings to be used as polling locations, which, if that's the case, we'd have to come back to this and perhaps change a different day during the year as an in-service day as per contract with our teachers. So I don't like to do that, and hopefully I might know more information when this won't be brought up next. At the next meeting is the budget proposal night, so this will actually skip over and will be brought up in 2 meetings a month from now. So we might have more information then. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about this calendar.
Mark.
So, Tom, you kind of, I don't want to say stole my thunder, but kind of segued to it. is that, the November 2nd, that's kind of something that we've been talking about for safety of the kids and things like that. And I've mentioned it somewhat in the past. I think we could solve our issue here with the in-service day is to do it on October 11th on Indigenous Peoples Day and give the kids, or have that day off. I mean, go to school that day and have, so it would take that additional day off that we have from November 2nd. So you would really, now we have an additional day off for November 2nd, and that the kids would be in school on the 11th, shortening that end of the year temperature thing by one day, but it would give an opportunity for that. Now, I think there was an argument in the past that it was an opportunity for kids to visit schools, and that may be the case, but now what I do and I bring to my experience to the table is now that I have a senior and with many friends on both ends of town, that day, and I can only speak from my experiences, wasn't really used to the fullest for school visits. We found that kids were taking days off in the middle of the week, Fridays, Mondays, just haphazardly, not around a vacation day. So I didn't really think that argument stood that much, but this way, had the kids in school one more day, getting out one more day early, things like that, and it would alleviate that additional day off that we haven't had over many years in November.
As a follow-up question, Tom, can you find out for us if there are other districts in the state that have students off on Indigenous Peoples Day or Columbus Day, but have the teachers in for an in-service professional development?
I can certainly ask. I'm not sure what kind of response rate I'll get, but I can look into it.
This went to Veterans Day too. Veterans Always Day used to be off, and our schools that still have Veterans Day off, we go to school during Veterans Day. So a lot of great programs.
Can I add to that? If you do ask, can you ask if they do any programming? Because I know with Veterans Day, I don't know if it's a rule, but most schools will have some kind of assembly, a great program. That's what I thought. Yeah. So I think it would be great if they did go to school that day, that they also get something out of it. But I also don't want to not do something if other schools are doing it and it is required or offensive. Or I just want to avoid potential problems if there was a change with that.
Yeah,
So
we've got a lot
have
of
that conversation.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's less of an issue than our contracts and our bargaining units. So that's something that this could interfere with because we have contracts in place. So we can check into that.
All right, thank you. I don't think we need to do anything else with this item, so we'll hold off and talk about it again in the middle of March. Moving on to item B, setting the date for June 2020 high school graduation. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education vote to set the date for this year's high school graduations to be on Monday, June 15th, 2020.
Yeah, this is part of a state law that changed this year that the Board of Ed can vote to schedule graduation as long as at the date that they're scheduling it, that date would have included 180 days of school. Previously, this is something people have asked a lot about over the years. If you, on April 1st, set the date and then there was snow, you wouldn't have had to make up those days. But if you had set it before, it would have pushed that day off. This is a bigger issue for districts that rent locations for their graduation site. So the reason that we're proposing this now is kind of we've gotten through, knock on wood, February at this point, and with just March, we feel pretty comfortable with that time. Having the graduation on a Monday can tie in the weekend. There are some difficulties with graduation on a Monday, but it can tie into a weekend for families that travel, and this can also give people a little bit of a head start to know when graduation is going to be this year.
Any questions, comments? Mark?
The public wants a real issue. This one. This is the issue that we get so much about. You can't understand how many times that we get it because people travel. People want to come in, and we have to wait till April 1st, and we always did. And this issue is a really big issue out there with parents. So I'm glad that we're proposing this.
I think we can also vote to have nice weather on June 15th so that both graduations can be outdoors. Everybody on board with that? All right. Other comments on this proposal? If not, I will try your minds. All those in favor of setting the graduation dates for our high schools to be on Monday, June 15th, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. It is Monday, June 15th. Thank you. Moving on to staff communications and reports. Superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you. Happy to report that West Hartford has 8 National Merit finalists this year. Conard has 3 National Merit finalists, Xavier Blackwell-Lipkin, Jenna Kopp, John Zier. Hall has 5, Karina Chang, Jimeng Fan, Ashley Granquist, Amy Hidalgo, and Rose Kitts. Congratulations to these students and all National Merit semifinalists. This is a great achievement, and those numbers are good numbers for us and for our kids. One of the things I want to bring up, and this is posted on the district website for people that are interested, it's one of my favorite reports every year, is the home language reports and the home language of students, and we try to track it historically. And just some interesting facts. Last year we had 74 different home languages spoken. This year 72 different home languages, so we lost 2 languages. But we're at 22% of our students have a language spoken other than English at home. The 6 largest groups this year, Spanish is far and away our number 1, but then Portuguese, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Nepali, and Arabic. And when you go through the charts and you trace historically what were the high languages, it tells a tremendous demographic story of West Hartford. You can see the increase in Spanish speakers over 20 years from about 200 people to about 800 people at different times. And you see a growth this year in Portuguese. And really what's kind of cool for these seniors, there was nobody speaking Nepali in West Hartford Public Schools when they were born, and now there's over 100 families that speak Nepali. So really just an interesting report. It's posted online. I'd urge people to look at. And overall, as far as our ESOL students go, and this kind of demonstrates just in a short time frame, in October 2015, we had 477 ESOL students, and now in 2020, we have 576. So really, you see this growth over time, and it's kind of, it speaks to who we are in ways directly, and really shows how diversity is our strength. So I urge anyone to look at this report when they get a chance.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to item B2. As a reminder, we've swapped the agenda order and learn a little bit more about REACH, Alternative High School Program. So I invite up all of the presenters. I think we have several.
There's elements of the presentation tonight, since this is going first, that this program and then Gretchen, like there are questions that kind of, I can see how they could parallel with each other. So some may be more appropriate for Gretchen that Paul would just say once Gretchen goes.
And again, if there are parents or family members here who want to come around and get a photo from this side, feel free to do so at your leisure.
Yes. So I want to thank Shelley Solomon and our students for being here this evening. And it's really going to be quick mark on my part. Turn this over to Shelley Solomon, who is not only assistant principal over at Hall High School, but is the administrator for our REACH program here in West Hartford. And she's prepared this report, so it's, take it away.
Am I pressing? Okay. Thank you for having us. As Paul said, I'm Shelley Solomon, and I am the assistant principal. It's hard to believe that 20 years ago, I was part of the planning committee for REACH. I sat, I think, in this room before it became the board room, and we spent several days, parents, students, you remember that, Tom? Parents, students, and staff members from both high schools, asking what can we do for our students that aren't making it in the large comprehensive high school for a variety of reasons. It's too big, it's too scary, there may be anxiety, they may have moved in from another district and not feel as academically ready for the rigor of West Hartford. So this program started 20 years ago, and it has blossomed and grown and changed with time. We continue to make changes to meet the needs of our students. Our staffing has increased. We have 4 full-time staff members, an English teacher and a math teacher and a social worker. I'm sorry, we have 3. A .6 CTE teacher. We have a .8 science and a .8 social studies, but we do have a full-time social worker. So our goal is to not only provide a rigorous education, but to offer social and emotional services and help students feel successful in their environment so that they can go back to their regular high school. In the past, we had students spending freshman and sophomore year in their home school and often falling behind academically, not coming to school. We're at greater risk of dropping out because the stress of not being able to keep up was real. So in recent years, we've shifted that, and we started, especially this year, bringing students in earlier with the hope of them being able to return to their home school to take advantage of the myriad programs and courses that we cannot offer in a small program of 40 students. However, having said that, we have expanded our programming. This year we are offering American Sign Language for the very first time as a language elective before the requirement took place for our incoming freshmen. We're also offering health on our own campus, and we have a career exploration course. So we're trying to increase the rigor and offer options. We offer some unique courses that are not offered in the either high school. We offer forensics, which I think the kids can attest to is probably one of the favorite classes they take. I was there visiting one day and they pulled a strand of my hair and found out that I do dye it. So, I mean, it's engaging. The class size is between 10 to 12. There's opportunities for individual education. This year we also instituted a sort of a big brother, big sister program because for the first time we had 14 new students arrive second semester. We had 6 seniors graduate a semester early. So they not only were able to move on into their career paths and make up credits, because we offer credit recovery as well, but it gave us the opportunity to bring a whole cadre of students in. And so we now have big brothers and big sisters with our new students, which range from second semester, 9th grade, to a few juniors. We've also instituted character awards and honor roll awards, much like an elementary school might do, for the kids so that they feel success and they want to achieve what some of the other students have. We have introduced a skills seminar that meets twice a week to help students prepare for SATs when they are in their junior year. So we're continually evolving as we try to raise the rigor for our students. I'm excited because I get to be a part of this again. And I chose to do this in addition to my assistant principalship. So, I mean, I love everything about it. And I'm there more often than sometimes, right? I actually FaceTime with the kids. Bev Urigian, our social worker, sets that up if I have to talk to them, whether it's something positive or something negative. So we have ways of communicating when I'm not physically able to be there. I do want to turn it over to the students. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We have a number of special programs and projects that we do. Thanks to some grant money and some innovations, we have done a beautification project in years past at the REACH environment. Last year, we had the Judy Doran Performance Project come in for a spring semester and help the students with expressive language, spoken word poetry, performance pieces, and artwork. And then we had a demonstration for everyone. We have a family feast at Thanksgiving. We try to do a lot of things that are unique and different. This year, we are having Empower Sports Leadership Group come in. I have to thank Ann McKiernan for always finding us grant money to do some innovative projects. So they're going to be coming in the spring. They're going to be meeting with us and our students 4 times and working on leadership skills, conflict resolution skills, community building. There will be 3 sessions in March and April in the building, and then we're doing a road trip to their new location in South Windsor to do an actual outdoor adventure activity with them. And we're hoping that they'll come back in the fall and kick off our school year that way as well. We are also this year taking the entire REACH student body, which is about 40 plus students. We hope all they want to go to the first ever Career Con, which is put on by the Office of Higher Education. And it is a survey program where about 40 different organizations, culinary institutes, career path programs, alternative post-high school programs will be demonstrating and their programs, what's involved for students, and having booths so that our REACH students that if they're choosing not to go to a traditional four-year high school, will see that there are options out there for them and want to strive to reach for those. Did I miss anything else? Okay, before I hand it off, I do want to thank the parents that came tonight and the students that are also in the audience, and I would like to read one email of a brand new REACH student that I got from a parent. Our family is so grateful for the REACH program. It is not an exaggeration to say it has saved us. Our son is in 10th grade and he suffers from depression and anxiety. So even the best days can have challenges, and the traditional school format was just not working for him. During the first half of 10th grade, he had 53 tardies and 35 absences from classes, and every day he begged not to go to school. Hall is a great high school, and the teachers and staff there did all they could to help him. They did not give up, and we are so grateful. When Ms. Solomon suggested REACH, we were at our wits' end, and we sincerely wondered whether our son would make it to graduation. After careful consideration, our son decided to try REACH. And after 2.5 weeks, our son has made it to the bus stop on his own every day. No tardies, no morning meltdowns. Yesterday, he even offered to make me breakfast. After barely passing most of his classes before, he currently has 4 A's, 1 B, and a C. He has shared with us some of the classwork and subject matter being covered. He is engaged, that's in bold letters, and interested. The staff members in the program are already making connections with our son. For the first time in a long time, we feel hope that our son will not only finish high school, but might even enjoy it. The reduction of stress for him and for us has profoundly impacted him and our entire family. The REACH program is rescuing our son, who might have otherwise fallen through the cracks. Thank you for this critical and crucial program. We appreciate everyone who makes it happen every day. Now I'd like to introduce you to 3 of our students. 2 are currently at REACH, and 1 returned to Hall High School for his senior year. It's all yours.
Okay. Well, I'm Alize Rivera, and I'm an 11th grader. I started REACH my second semester of 10th grade due to grades not really there focused in my classes. What my plan was after high school was questionable. Since I've been at REACH, I've never got lower than a B. I've made it into honor roll a couple times. I've seen my GPA rise right away. I've made connections with almost all of my teachers, and for the new kids that started this semester, 14 new kids, I started creating bonds with half of them that I'm pretty sure that if I was still at Conard, I would have never even recognized. A couple things that I've told the new kids and kind of welcomed them into REACH with was, you have to want to help yourself. You can't just go there and expect it to just be like laid off or like easier. You have to want to help yourself. You have to want to just be there. Like, you have to want to be better, do better. Also, everyone there is welcoming. The first step there, even my interview process into going there, I I never felt kind of more comfortable. I know that I've grew up in West Hartford, and I know that rising up in elementary school, middle school, I didn't really have support. The teachers were kind of lenient, and you kind of had to advocate for yourself. There was no help or support that I needed, and I know that at Reach, that it's a safe environment, and I'm gonna make it somewhere in life.
My name is Andrew Gopal. I am a junior, and I'm currently attending Reach Alternative High School. I see Reach as a big opportunity for redemption, and ever since starting my freshman year in Hall High School, it was very difficult for me because I came from a different district in Hartford, and it's just a lot of new things I've learned and some things I couldn't catch up on, and ever since then I was looking to Miss Solomon for help, and we had a meeting and we saw this school as a much better opportunity for me to gain credits and, just make it more different for me. And because I was very anxious for when asking for help, and it just gets to me every single time. But now, ever since coming to Reach, I do feel like I'm at a safe place, and it's always good to see students surrounding me and students who are very cooperative. Same goes for the teachers as well, building relationships with all of them. And what's next for me? I'm looking into engineering pretty much, and because after all these new classes coming in, I've learned a lot from them, and I hope to see more classes coming in for the next gen freshmen as well.
What Andrew hasn't told you is that for the first year, he barely spoke. He didn't look you in the eye, and this is amazing. I think his mom would agree. And not only that, Andrew is currently taking a Period 1 class. Reach starts later, so we already have the late start time. I had to sneak that in. But students have the option, if they from Hall, they can go to a first period class at Hall, and we have 2 students doing that now, Andrew being one, and a second semester freshman who actually opted to stay as well. So then they get transportation over. And at Conard, we have many more students because it's an easy access point for them. We also have students throughout the day taking courses individually when there's space available to in the Conard building. So Andrew's also planning to go back full-time to Hall next year.
It really has helped me prepare, so I'm going to give it a shot next year.
Hello, my name is Karan Warren. I am a senior currently attending Hall High School, and I was at Reach from my second semester of my freshman year to finishing my junior year at Reach, and I went back to Hall in my senior year. But my first semester of my freshman year at Hall was very lacking and not meeting expectations. My grades were very abysmal, to a point where I was a 0.1% away from failing one of my classes. And I noticed this, and I knew I could apply myself better and stronger. But another problem I had, that wasn't even my grades, was also my drive and going to school, doing what I have to do, and just getting through my life and making the most of it. So after my first semester, my teachers opted for me to go to Reach, and I actually opposed this. Well, I wouldn't say I opposed it, but more along the lines of I was apprehensive of going, because I heard from many things from my sister who had graduated at the time from Hall, that Reach was nothing but a place for bad kids who are basically nothing but dropouts who basically get dumped off to this other place with nothing better to do. So I was apprehensive, but I met the teachers of Reach, and I signed the contract, and I knew right away that this would potentially be something very beneficial to me. So I started my second semester of freshman year at Reach, and the classes there and the teaching that the teachers gave me, the support, everything was just so beneficial to me that my grades went from D's near F's and C's to being B's and A's in a matter of just like that. And I found that growth to be so amazing, and it continued from freshman year to sophomore year to junior year, and it even has now carried over to me going back to Hall for my senior year, and my grades are still they're still good. I couldn't think of a better word. So Reach has helped me with my grades, my work ethic and drive, and just overall making like my career, not my career, but my future more clear to me. And as a side note, in my junior year of Reach, they offered this class called internship, and it was here in which I, along with other students, would go on a job shadow 9 to whenever, maybe 3, and we would just shadow over this person and try to go into a career with this. I chose teaching, and the person who I shadowed is actually in the audience. Matt Downey has his hand up, and I've known him up as of today, I've known him for 10 years now, because he was a mentor for me back when I was in second grade, and when I was I just needed a bit more of a an academic and emotional push. I needed to like have a bit of a drive back then, and he's been with me since then until second to 7th grade, and then he stopped. But then I reconnected with him through my internship, and I spent April 22nd to June 10th with him in a first grade classroom at Morley. And it was here where my career became more and more apparent to me of maybe I want to become a teacher. And it came to the point in which this year, in senior year, I ended up continuing my internship despite me going back to Hall. This is an accredited class. And from, I believe it was September 16th potentially, to right now, I have been in his classroom for about 3 hours a day. Not 3 hours a day. Going in at 12 and, 11 to 12 depending on the day, and then leaving at 3:20 or 2 depending on the day. Every day. Monday to Friday. And this has given me the opportunity to plan my future in a way where I never thought I could. And it's all because of the opportunities that I had at Reach. And it has also come to the point in which I have applied to Central Connecticut State University and Manchester Community College for student teaching, and I've been accepted to Manchester Community College, and my future is just so apparent to me now. And I'd just like to thank Reach for giving me the opportunities that I have today.
So, there's nothing that I think Ann or I can say that can top what these students have said. I'm just so excited for this report because Reach is one of these little hidden gems here in the district, as you can very clearly see. And I just wanted to take an opportunity to not only thank our student speakers that'll be ready to answer any questions, to thank Ms. Solomon, but importantly to thank all of the Reach teachers, some of whom are here in the audience, for their dedicated service. And being able to provide kids a vision for their future, which you clearly heard. So at this point, we open it up to your questions.
Can you stand if you're affiliated with the REACH program so we have a sense of who you are? Thank you so much. Who has questions? Sean?
So I think you mentioned 0.8, 0.6, and which I understand. So what are the teachers doing? But they're teaching a few classes here. My question is, what are they doing the other, the 0.2, the 0.4 that's remaining?
I'm so loud I don't think of it. I saw that, Paul. The 0.8 is science, and he teaches one class at Conard. And the social studies 0.8 also teaches at Conard. The 0.2 ASL teaches 4 classes at Conard. We have health we added this year, and they teach, that's one section 3 times a week, a 0.08. He teaches at Conard as well. The 0.6, our CTE person, Carol Wilkes, also is responsible for the mentor program and the career to school pathway, and does job shadows through both high schools. You're welcome.
Lorna?
Thank you so much for the presentation, and young people, so very proud of you. There were 3 key things I heard from each of you. You spoke of how you have to want it, and you spoke about redemption, and you spoke about drive. And those are qualities and characteristics that will carry you far in life, because when you're intrinsically motivated to want more, nothing can stop you. So thank you so much for being a demonstration of that. We are so very proud of you, and keep going.
Ari.
I just had a question, and any of you, all of you, one of you can respond, and this is to the students. I guess my question for you is, how was REACH different? How was your experience at REACH different than your experience at Hall or Conard? What was it about the program that spoke to you and kind of changed your path?
Definitely the later starting times and the all the schoolwork. It's done over there. There's no homework. You get the extended time that you need over at REACH. And what else is different? The class size for sure. Yeah. There's like less students, and it just makes it more comfortable, and you have more peers around there to support you as well. So that's all.
I agree with him on that one. The classes are smaller. I feel like because there's only a limited amount of kids there, it's a safer environment. People want to come to school because of the support that's there. The teachers are more aware. I think there's more awareness in the teachers because the classes are smaller. Then again, kids are able to ask questions. They're not afraid of being either judged or looked at different because of their questions. Everybody supports each other. Also because the classes are smaller, kids are, I feel like, participate more. Like they want to be in the class. They want to be involved.
Another component could be that the classes that are offered at REACH, some of them are very unique that you couldn't get at either Hall or Conard. For example, Ms. Solomon brought up forensics earlier, which is a very fun class. Other classes that are unique to REACH, another class would be film study, of a class that I think, you're taking it right now. It's a very engaging class, and that's engaging classes, I feel like, bring more attention to students, and they enjoy like the school overall more if the classes themselves draw you in more. Yeah.
Rob.
I just wanted to compliment all of you, kind of piggybacking on Lorna. You always get in there so quick and say such inspirational things. So I'll probably pale in comparison. But hearing each night, I just want you to know that each of you inspired me. It's like you all have amazing stories, and it's just great to hear your personal success stories and your confidence. And there's a lot of bad things that we hear about in the world today, and to see the three of you sit up here with such confidence and grace, and just being proud of yourself. I mean, don't ever lose that. And it's great to hear that you know you won't, and that if this program has inspired you, kudos to all the people in the audience that have helped you along the way. Great job, great job, and don't ever stop. You know, you guys are obviously leaders, and just keep believing in yourself. And there's nothing you can't do. So, kudos to each of you.
Isabella.
I was wondering if there was a way to educate the Hall and Conard students more about this program, because I think that might help eliminate some of the stigma and rumors that are associated with this program, because those are sort of a product of a lack of information for the rest of the students at Hall and Conard, because it's a really great program, and it's incredible to hear your stories, and I think that a lot of the rest of the student body would share that opinion if they knew what it actually was.
Thanks, Izzy. That's a great idea. And one of the things we started to do is ask some of our current REACH students to speak to students when parents or staff are thinking about REACH as an option. So to introduce it before you need to do it. One of the things that we didn't mention is it's an application process. We don't force students to go. We have students that I think may not want to go, but come to the realization that they need to go. And that really is the difference, I think. So that the more that we can share the value in it and some of these success stories, I think will help students. And I think we did that this year because of our 14 new students. The dynamic in the program has changed, and we used our current students a lot to inform parents and possible students as well.
Thank you for the presentation, and Tom hates this, so as always, thank you so much, Paul. Thank you. No, I just had to thank all of you guys as well, but I have to be the guy in the room that does this, I guess, but without making the program look bad, because we all think it's amazing, but even as a Hall teacher, I was a little confused, working at Hall, the difference between Strive and Ask and REACH, and I'm sure there's other Tier 2 and 3 programs that we have that are also wonderful. What can we do that you might say, maybe I could say it too, because we're all here, volunteer, how could we make the program better? Any suggestions without throwing anybody under the bus, no names? Maybe we could help your teachers out a little bit with a policy, something big. If you can just share that with us at some point, it doesn't have to be now, but I think you guys are the key. You've been through it, right? Or you're going through it. You're kind of a big brother or sister now. So if you could, not right now, but at some point, don't forget to give back, just like your teacher is giving back to you. Now it's your turn. So give back to the school, the program that you just came from. Don't forget to send an email and help us help the next generation, okay? Thank you.
I think there are some things that will come up in the budget because the increase in credits could affect these kids negatively. And so we have to make sure we're reinvesting in the REACH program to make sure it's not only stays as good as it is, but gets better and meets the needs of all of our kids. So that's something we'll be talking about in 2 weeks too.
Sorry, one more question. That was my next question for Shelley, was that new graduation requirements coming up. What's the plan? Are you concerned?
Well, I meet regularly with Paul and Ann, and we talk about that a lot. So possibly increased time. I know the kids wouldn't want to hear that, but we may have to reduce how late we start is a possibility. But expanding course offerings is also another piece, and so that may impact staffing as well. So we're looking down the road at all of those things, which is why we brought ASL in this year. So some of the current students that were taking it at their home school could continue. And so that some of the freshmen that may not be taking a language this year because adjustment to high school is difficult will have that opportunity as well. We're now looking at how we can do the new wellness model for grade 9 and 10 and how we can assimilate that into a different structure. So we're planning for the future as well as staying current as we can. I also want to let you all know that we're going to be having a big 20-year celebration in the spring, and you are all invited. We're going to bring back alumni and staff and anybody that wants to come to celebrate the successes of REACH.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback a couple of fast things and what Shelley very aptly described. The world language, as she said, the world language, we already brought that in to hit that requirement. That was not previously a component of the REACH program. ASL was chosen strategically because you have students coming in and maybe they had French, maybe they had Spanish, maybe they were in Spanish 1, maybe they were in Spanish 3, so there wasn't really a good way. So we said we need a clean experience for students so that we can catch all students, and we wanted something that was engaging. And I'm seeing some smiles, so I think we picked a winner. We've already implemented increased health classes over at REACH in preparation for those increased requirements with our student body. The mastery experience piece was the part I wanted to add. We feel like REACH is just a place where that's going to happen naturally based on the types of experiences and some of the engaging curriculum that students are involved in. So that component of it is not a dramatic concern for us. Some of the rest, really, it's the credit acquisition, and then the next one is making sure there's an arts credit in there that used to be arts or technology, and under the new graduation requirements, it's very specifically arts. So that access to some of our elective courses, that's historically been the challenge. You hear about a couple of students here that are availing themselves of courses over at their home schools. We need to look at the strategies in order to make sure that those offerings, if not a component of REACH itself, are more flexible. So that's really the big piece in front of us, other than hitting that number 25.
Any other questions or comments? Again, thank you so much. This was really educational and inspirational as well. Thanks. I'm going to call for, thank you. I'm going to call for a very brief break. So if everybody could come back in about 4 minutes or so, that'd be great. Thank you. We're in recess momentarily.
Come.
You see Julius? Look, Julius is here. No, we're gonna go get water because you have to go to.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order. And our next presentation will be... Yeah. All right, I'm just going to ask folks out in the audience to take conversations outside. All right. Our next conversation is item B1, Trauma-Informed Practices and Behavior Support. All right, good evening. Thank you so much for having me here to talk about this topic. It's tough to follow that group. They were incredibly inspirational. And so, are you sure you want me to start? You want me to? Okay. All right. So, as the Director of Pupil Services, you're only as good as your team. And I am so incredibly fortunate to be supported by a clinical team that, is unsurpassed. And so Stacy Kellogg-Shove is our clinical director, and she unfortunately has a confirmed case of the flu as of this morning, so she was not able to join us tonight. But I'm also very proud to sit at this table with Pat Tyler, our new district crisis social worker. And so Pat and I will be sharing the information, and Stacy shared all of her notes, so unfortunately you'll have to hear me talk through at least 2/3 of this presentation. Last year, Stacy and I reported to the board about suicide prevention and mental health. And it's a serious topic, and there was a lot of information shared. When we came back to the table, the drawing board, to take a look at this year's presentation, some of that information bled over into this year. In fact, the CDC hasn't updated their statistics, but I think they're still incredibly relevant. So as we talk about trauma-informed practices and mental health support, just so that we have a common playing field, I just want to talk about what mental health is, where we're coming from. And mental health is actually quite a neutral term, and it just refers to our emotional well-being. Factors that can affect our mental health are biological factors such as genetics, brain chemistry, neurology, our life experiences, which can include trauma and abuse, our family history of mental health problems. All of those factors can either positively or negatively, most often negatively, affect our mental health. And so it's our job in this district to be aware of the signs that our students are in need of mental health support. And so some of the challenges that students find can be temporary, others can be longer lasting. Some can have an adverse effect over a long period of time and end up being a disabling condition. And so we need to be prepared to provide services on a continuum. Trauma in particular, we've learned more and more about over the last few years. And I have some statistics to share with you. 1 in 4 children attending school has been exposed to a traumatic event. More than 50% of adults report having adverse experience as a child. 25% of children experience a serious traumatic event before 16, and 25 of those children develop PTSD, depression, or anxiety disorders. Trauma can result in a response to an event or overwhelm a person's ability to cope. Trauma impacts behavior, relationships, and academic performance. And so we know that students that are in need of support, especially from a traumatic situation, can't access the brain that they need to engage in school. And so again, it is our job to make sure that we're aware of what's happening with students and that we're providing a continuum of services. National statistics mirror really what's happening in West Hartford. Again, the CDC let us know that 1 in 6 children at the ages of 2 to 8 have a diagnosed mental health, behavioral, or developmental disorder. Some other statistics that I presented in the report, and I just want to highlight, is about 10.3% of children 3 to 17 have anxiety or depression, and about 40% of children with anxiety or depression have difficulty with behavioral regulation. Those are the students we can observe having issues. 60% of those students with anxiety and depression are what we refer to as internalizers. So they look inward as they're having difficulty. And it's a little bit harder for us to identify those students and provide support. But again, that's why I have this incredible team that I work with, because they've become very, very good at that. In West Hartford, some of the things that we look at when we're trying to determine how big is this problem, where do we find that we need the most support, and how do we support students through different types of support programs. And so when I look at some of the data, I'm looking at how many students do we have with an IEP, and what have the trends been over time. So currently, this year, right now, we have about 1,489 students with an IEP. They qualify in one of 13 categories for disability. And that gives us a prevalence rate of about 13.8%. This is up from the year 2016-17, where we had 1,327. So we've seen an increase in students with IEPs over the last 4 years. We've also seen a pretty dramatic increase in students with the 504 plan. In the years 15-16, we had 244 students with a 504 plan. This year we have 834. Some of that had to do with new legislation in the state of Connecticut, but we've also become more aware of students who need support. So of those 834 students with a 504 plan this year, 195 of them are getting additional clinical support. So it's not just for academics, but for other mental health reasons. We've also seen a pretty dramatic increase in the number of at-risk assessments that we've been doing in district. We've been tracking this for a long time. So in the year 2010 to 2011, we had 149 risk assessments. Now, the majority of them are low risk. They were determined to be low risk. This year, we so far have had 218 risk assessments, and again, the majority are low risk. Last year, we peaked at 402. So there were 402 risk assessments that were conducted by a clinical member of our team in the district for students. We've also seen over the last couple of years a pretty dramatic increase in the number of referrals to special ed. Last year, we had 296 referrals and found 176 students eligible. That's new throughout the year. And this year so far, we've had 243 referrals, finding 57 students eligible for special education. Now, some of those are for academic reasons, but some are not. We've also seen increases in enrollment in our specialized program. So our out-of-district placements, last year we had 24 new placements in out-of-district, so students that we could not provide the appropriate supports for in our district and we needed to place out. In, let's see, in 1920 so far we've had 16 new out-of-district placements. We are anticipating a slight increase in our intensive behavioral programs next year. In the last 2 years, we have run a program which you supported, the school engagement program. And for students there, we've maintained 14 students there each year. That's about capacity for us with the current staffing that we have. And so students who may need those same type of supports, we will refer out. So they're included in our out-of-district placements. And our students at Strive, and the question of what is the difference between Strive and Reach, all the students at Strive have an IEP, so they have qualified under IDEA in a specific disability category, and they really have shown us that a smaller environment, much like the presentation you just saw, specialized classes, increased therapeutic support is very beneficial for them to prevent them from going to an out-of-district placement. So they are able to stay in our school system. Many of the students at Strive are able to, like the students you saw before us tonight, move back to their high schools part-time or full-time eventually. So we have seen increases in those numbers. Those are just some of the data points that we look at when we look at how many students need support and where we need support. So like I said, we do offer a continuum of services, and happy to let you know that a lot of that is proactive. And so what are we doing and what's available for every student? And that starts with the curriculum. So our health curriculum is infused from elementary school on. We've also seen some differences to our Wellness 9 and our Wellness 10 curriculum, responding to current issues and current trends. In each school, they have an opportunity to adapt programs that help with social and emotional well-being and a positive environment. Again, it's up to the schools which ones they choose for themselves. So some of our schools engage in Second Step, mindfulness, CPS, collaborative and proactive solutions, ruler, and responsive classrooms. So many of these programs or cultures are created in the individual schools, and every student has access to those. But also in every school, we emphasize with all of our staff members, every single one of them, the benefit of a strong, nurturing relationship. And so whether it's, engaging families, engaging students through professional development, all of our teachers are encouraged to develop those personal relationships, which we know is key to students feeling safe and comfortable. We also have provided a lot of PD to teachers that help with this through our cultural competence, through our behavioral regulation and management strategies to all staff members. At the high school level and the middle school level, student surveys. We have anonymous student surveys each year through the health curriculum, and they encourage honest reporting, and this enables us to monitor issues and provide additional support where it's needed. We also have an anonymous reporting app. An anonymous alerts, anti-bullying, and safety app is used to allow students a safe way to speak up by eliminating the potential barriers of social peer pressure. This app is available to secondary students and to parents, and people are accessing, and we have had 167 reports on the anonymous app received since October of 2018. And I know that many of those anonymous reports have led to interventions, have led to support for students specifically in their home or in school, very, very positive effect from those anonymous apps, from those anonymous reports. We also have SRBI built into the system, SRBI for behavior. And so through the tiered system, which is scientific research-based interventions, we are able to provide supports to students on a non-mandated basis. And this is through the student success team or action teams at each school that meet regularly to identify and support students in need. Tier 1 supports accessible to all would be PBIS, Second Step, Ruler, Mindfulness, CPS, the health curriculum, school-wide management systems, and individual classroom systems. When we get to Tier 2 and Tier 3, these plans become much more individualized to a student. Those students who need and demonstrate a need for additional support may get additional services like check-in, check-out, short-term counseling, support with goal setting, and set time to receive positive reinforcement. It's really designed to help students build coping skills and advocacy skills. Students also have access to accommodations like breaks, passing before the bell, anytime passes, and all students who are receiving these Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports are monitored to see how they're responding. And if they're not responding, we adjust the strategies. If students really struggle, our school communities can access extended individual counseling, group work, community supports, the Bridge, 211, regular consultation with community providers and outpatient therapists. More intensive accommodations can be provided, like schedule changes, modified school day, and set daily check-ins. With this process, again, students' progress is monitored and adjusted as needed. Our Tier 4 is really that referral to special education. Right? So if a student isn't responding, it's our job to make sure that we're finding the right way to do that. And if a student qualifies for special education, it means that they qualify for specialized instruction. So in addition to those proactive supports, we also have responsive supports. So I'm going to skip the trauma-informed right now and put that at the back burner, and we're going to come back to that. Clinical services or school-based related services involve those students with a diagnosed disability, and that's a student with an IEP or a 504. They will have clinical time goals on those IEPs. This is different from the non-mandated clinical support that you see in the tiers. Through a 504, students get accommodations to support their ability to access, and that includes related services like clinicians. And if a student has an IEP, they have goals and objectives that are developed based on current needs to remediate any issues that they have so that they can access their education. IEP services can include individualized or small group counseling, self-regulation, coping skills strategies, social thinking, expected and unexpected behaviors, problem solving, cognitive behavior techniques, challenging negative thought patterns. Clinical teams can also conduct FBAs or functional behavioral assessments and then create BIPs or positive behavior support plans. And so those in conjunction with our district BCBAs are implemented to really help a student learn skills. Clinicians and school counselors actively consult with the community providers and resources, 211, partial hospitalization programs, and any outside clinicians. Our clinicians also conduct the risk assessments that I spoke about earlier. All West Hartford Public School staff, all of them, are trained yearly by school-based clinical teams around the warning signs and procedures for notifying a clinical staff member if they're concerned about a student. And then clinical staff are also trained annually to follow our district guidelines as outlined through our Suicide Prevention and Response Manual. This manual was developed by a small group of clinicians years ago and is updated every few years to include the most current research. So this suicide and risk manual is used by every clinician in the district so that we have consistency. Supports in school counseling and daily check-ins, access to community resources, consultation with providers, and access to immediate medical teams are all implemented when a student has presented with a risk. Follow-up supports are provided and monitored based on the student's need. Another support that we have, most recently re-legislated by the state, is every school has a PMT crisis team. So in each building, a designated group of individuals are identified by a principal, and they are all trained, and we use PMT, which is physical management training. It's just the brand of training that we use. It affords consistency and a certification. And everyone is trained every year on that PMT team, that PMT crisis team. They meet regularly with the administrator in their building. They review all policies and procedures. And this team is the team that responds if a student is presenting with any type of behavior that may lead to a restraint or a seclusion or a dangerous behavior to self or others. And then finally, our trauma-informed PD. So over the last few years, the topic of trauma has come up. There's been sporadic, different kinds of resources that have been provided in professional development at the building level, and we decided that we needed a consistent, uniform way of making sure that all staff have training. And so this year we engaged an organization from Pennsylvania to come in and train our clinicians on trauma-informed practices. And for that PD, the clinicians have been participating as a large group, having discussions, and then they were charged with turnkeying that, going back to their individual buildings, working with their administrators, and developing PD for all the staff in their building based on the individual staff needs. So at this point, almost every building has been surveyed, the teachers, the staff, to determine what their needs are, and the principals and clinicians are implementing these PD plans, making sure that the professional development is accessible to all, with the understanding that there's no absolute one way to do it, one right way to do it, that this professional development that our clinicians have been receiving really is a way for them to introduce new things to add to their toolbox. They're meeting individually, they're pulling together resources at each level to make sure that they're sharing resources, and this information will be getting out to staff over the next year. And so those really is really an outline of all the things that we're doing reactively to support students with issues. In terms of crisis management, we have some resources that are at our hands. 211, I think we must have our own 211 caseworkers here, just dedicated to the town of West Hartford. They've been incredibly responsive over the last 2 years. We have certainly seen an increase in the quality of 211 services. Our parents know about this service. They are accessing 211 services in their homes as well as in school. It's a very successful intervention in many cases. All staff members know that if 211 is an option, it's a decision that's made by an administrator and the crisis team. Any staff member in the building can call 911 if there's an emergency. And then we also are using our best and favorite community provider, and that is the Bridge. And so the Bridge is providing specific groups, girls empowerment group, boys groups, mentoring groups, counseling. We also have Bridge members that attend our clinical teams and attend our SST teams. So we are in constant communication with our community provider, and our families are accessing their services as well. And then this year, I'm proud to say that we have a district social worker, crisis team social worker in Pat, and she has two primary roles, and I'm going to stop talking and let her tell you what she does.
Thank you. So, for those, some of you know me and some of you don't. So, for those who don't, I worked at the Bridge for 20 years and loved it very much. And in that role, I worked with the school district in West Hartford every day. So, I was always in the schools. So, that was my first home, and now I'm in my second home. Working for the district, which I'm loving. And it's really nice because it was a nice transition going from there to here because I know a lot of the people, so it was really pretty seamless in the job that I'm doing. So in this new role, there's pretty much two key pieces that I'm doing. The first is there's a district crisis response team. So that's made up of myself, Gretchen, Stacy Kellogg, who has the flu, and Andy Morrow, and Eric Dempsey, who's the director of safety and security for the district. So we meet monthly. We look at different protocols we have in place, how we can continually improve serving students who are showing especially risky behaviors. So what I will do is if there's a particular school who has a student they're concerned about and they're looking for extra support, I'll work with that building-based team. And it's just a separate set of eyes. And sometimes I'll do student interviews, I'll do parent interviews, we'll do collaborative meetings together and really come up with appropriate responses for students, putting all of our heads together and all our expertise and building all those relationships. So that's a really big piece of the district piece that I do. The other piece is that if there was an unfortunate death of a student or a teacher, I will be called to that school to provide support for the faculty there, for the students there, along with other clinical support staff within the district. So I think that's really an important role in providing support. The second big piece is we have this new triage model. So to explain what that is, so basically it was started to help because a lot of times social workers and psychologists, so they have caseloads, and they would often get pulled away to manage crises. So what we wanted to do is develop a model that would be more predictable so they could see those kids on their caseloads and they could be served. And then other kids who are in crisis or what we call need a triage, I would serve them as well as other social workers. So I'll tell you how this works. So for example, on Mondays and Fridays, I'm at Hall High School. So I am the triage person for that day. So any student that comes down who's unscheduled, so they may come down, a friend may come down and say, I'm really worried about my friend, can you talk to her? Or a teacher will contact one of us and say, this student wrote something really concerning in an essay, and we're wondering if you could meet with them. We might have somebody who needs a risk assessment, or someone who's anxious or depressed, or maybe there was a breakup and somebody's crying in the bathroom. So it could be anything unscheduled, and I would meet with them on Mondays and Fridays at Hall when I'm there. Sometimes it can be quick, and I work with them on just kind of calming them down, getting some coping skills, and they go back to class. Sometimes it's more intense, and it can take 2-3 hours, or most of my day, managing it. I work with administrators, I report back to teachers, respecting confidentiality, but letting them know that it's been taken care of. A lot of involvement with parents, so I'll be calling them, connecting them with outside supports. So that's basically how that works. And what will happen, so on Tuesdays when I'm at Conard, there'll be a triage person at Hall. So there'll be a social worker assigned. So every Tuesday, a Hall social worker, that'll be their role to do. But what's helpful is that they know Tuesday's my day, but the other days I can see my students that are on my caseload and really predictably meet them and support those students. While we're also supporting the students who are just coming and needing support, whether the nurse calls, school counseling calls, they show up at pupil services. So it's really been a great collaborative way to help kids on both ends. A positive thing that's helped is that we have clinical teams, so we meet regularly. So for example, if I do a risk assessment on a student, I'll let members of my clinical team know, and it's just a small group of people, so that on the next day, if that person shows up, they'll be aware and they can provide the support that they need. I also have nice flexibility, so if I needed to check in with that student again and I was scheduled to be at Conard, I might say to them, you know what, I need to check in with so-and-so, and then I'll head over to Conard on that day. So I think it's worked really well, and one of the things we wondered is, you know, if somebody has a different person this day and that day, is how will that work? But we found that it really gives kids more adults that are taking care of them, and more adults with different styles who are intervening. And they come down and they know us all and we know them, and there's some kids who come one time and they don't come back, and they get settled and they get what they need. And then we have some others who come more often, and we're aware of them and we support them as best we can. So I think it's worked really well. So far, I've served 97 students to date since the beginning of the school year, and I started tracking in October once I figured out what I was doing. And then in terms of just a few statistics, so in terms of the number of triage interventions, that means kids who show up without an appointment. I've done 120 of those since the beginning of this year. Parent contacts, which I'm really proud of, I've made 124 contacts with parents. So when we talk about connecting school and families and community together, it's amazing. It's amazing collaboration to help kids. And the other big category is case management, which is calling therapists, calling programs, coordinating services, letting them know so that we're working collaboratively to help kids, and we're sharing information with parent permission, of course. So I think there's other things I do. I go to PPTs, I go to 504 meetings. There's, sometimes an administrator will say, can you just introduce yourself to this student to be a resource? And I'll do that. So it's a lot of other things, but the main three categories were those. So I'd say in summary, I think it's working really well. I think kids are getting more adult support and resources and more consistency in their meetings, which I think is important. And it prevents crises if they're being able to be seen regularly like they're intended to. And it's just been a real privilege because working with kids individually. At the Bridge, I did some of that, but I did more administrative, clinic oversight and all of that, so a clinical lens, but just meeting with kids every day. And when I see these REACH kids up here and the future leaders I just love it. I'm like, wow, how lucky am I just to be with all of you and be with all of them and being part of this bigger thing. It's been amazing. So very lucky. Thank you.
You guys the board supported
Yes.
the position last year of crisis team social worker. And it was something that when Gretchen and I were discussing it, swear to God, we said, well, we need to create a position that would be like what Pat Tyler does. And then after we posted it, she called us and it was like, oh my God, it worked perfect.
It was perfect.
It was perfect for me too.
Yeah. So that is a general overview. If you have any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I believe we do have some questions. We'll start with Mark.
So thank you. A lot of information and not new to me, and I support your programs. You know that. But and I don't know why I haven't asked this from before, and I certainly don't want to put any more work on you. But you talked about all those data points, and they were very interesting to me. Is that something that we can track back? And not tomorrow, not, I don't know, maybe at the end of school year, September, no rush. But those data points, because then, the trends and things like that, it was very interesting to me. And then the anonymous reports trend as well. I know you had some numbers here, but maybe some, where do they peak? How do they peak? And quite honestly, it's a management tool too. You can look at, maybe you already have these and you don't just have to press print. And, you see maybe in, around testing. I don't know, I'm just, but, or an event, obviously, that happens in West Hartford, things like that, that would demonstrate those numbers. I know when we put incidences from the safety and security piece, thereby, state definition and things like that. So it would just be helpful, and it's nothing I need tomorrow, but I think maybe something that we can include just even going forward in these presentations.
If I could, I think it's something, Andy will talk about pieces of this at the end of the year with our school safety report that does tie into some of this, because the anonymous alerts is an example, because you will get people that will say, what are administrators doing? Is it top heavy? Is what's going on? So the anonymous alerts don't typically happen at 10 in the morning. They happen at 11 at night. I mean, there's been time, it's me or Andy or Eric or a building principal. I can't not have my phone on anymore. I mean, it is just that. There was one night with a board meeting at 11:30 literally, and I was up with the police for another 2 hours. And I don't say that to be poor me at all, because I'm so thankful that we have it. The issue is that the other after effect of this is when people talk about I'm tired, they are, because this is, and as so many of you on the board know, it is a constant work. I mean, Pat, the moment you speak to her, she's at the building the next morning. You talk to her at 3 in the morning, and she's at the building at 7 in the morning. And just the notion with Gretchen, Julio Duarte just texted me 5 minutes ago with something that I'll call him about after the meeting. That's the kind of thing that our administrators are more and more dealing with. And it's really the mental health aspect for our kids is the thing. If you ask teachers and administrators, that's the thing that, if you want to use the phrase burnout, that's what it is. I mean, that's what it's around, because we're worried, frankly.
I'd be happy to get those statistics for you. Most of what I presented tonight, I have all of that there, so we can take a look at it.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Ari?
I was just wondering if you had any thoughts. I mean, I know you had spoke to the idea that our numbers kind of mirror the greater, community at large. But do you have any thoughts kind of specific to West Hartford and our students and our schools and beyond our schools that speaks to kind of the rationale behind these are significant increases.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, as a district, do you see certain things that contribute to that or that might explain?
So I think some of the explosion in some of those numbers, especially the at-risk assessments, some of it is awareness and some of it is training, and that's good. It's really good. And so I think that when we had our retraining around DCF, I think that raised a lot of issues for people, and people started talking about that. What is appropriate versus inappropriate? And I think that awareness then spiked a lot of our at-risk assessments as people were really listening to children. And so, yes, I think all of them are very, very real, but I also think that our ability to look at things, just even acknowledging the internalizers versus the externalizers and our increased awareness of what to look for with internalizers has led to that. I think that we have seen, like the national trends overall, an increase in anxiety and depression. I can't answer the whys. I could have a cup of coffee and philosophically talk about them. Potentially, I can't answer them specifically. We can't put our finger on anything. I do think they are increasing, but I think it's coupled with increased awareness.
I think there's one other piece too in West Hartford. We've talked about it being a destination district for parents that are looking for the best thing for their children. So 2 years ago, we're at a 12% special education rate, which is basically the state average. Now we're at 13.8%, 72 move-ins from the end of the school year till now. But
with IEPs.
With IEPs already, yeah, that's the, this isn't something. And then there's a piece also that, what does that population look like here versus somewhere else? And one of the things that I think is fascinating is the incidence of children living with autism in other districts as a percentage of their special ed population is about 12.5%. Correct?
So our percentage overall is 2.4%, but the average of percentage within our special ed population, the average is 12.8,
so
but ours is higher.
Ours is close to, it's 12.8 in the state. Ours is, I think, 19.3%.
Of our
students with disabilities, which that also tells you who's moving in and what kind of services they're looking for and demanding for their children. So that's a good picture also that gives some of the information behind the numbers.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Izzy?
So I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
What is the 211 thing?
So 211 is a service that is operated by the state. You can call 211 for information about healthcare needs, and it's primarily used for behavioral concerns, and so you can call 211 and they will listen to what's happening, and if they feel like it's warranted, they will send out a 211 care worker to come and help assess the situation. So any citizen can dial 211 for that support and that information. I'm glad you asked.
Sorry. And Another question I have is, how can we make the pupil services department more accessible to students? Because they do an excellent job, but a lot of students don't know that either they exist or where they are, or that they're allowed to go in and ask for help. And I think especially with this triage plan, I think that's great. But a lot of students who maybe have friends that need support, and they're noticing that, but some teachers might not be in some situations. They don't know that they can go and ask for support in this. So how can we make that more widely known amongst the student body?
That's a really good question. I think that students, we maybe make an assumption that's wrong, that students will feel comfortable going to their school counselors, and then school counselors will then in turn provide access to pupil services. But maybe that's a wrong assumption. And so I think it's a great conversation to have about ways that we can make sure that pupil services and related services are accessible. I would hope that every student has a really good, strong relationship with the teacher, a teacher in their school, and teachers will refer students to pupil services or to school counseling.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate your coming and educating us tonight. Moving on to routine matters. Approval of the minutes. So we're looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the February 4th, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Amanda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Lorna. Or is there any discussion on the minutes? If not, I'll try your minds. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you. Information and reports. Are there, so the first item is board members, communications and reports. Are there any reports from other boards and organizations? Okay. Any other information and discussions? Cruising right through. Moving to non-staff communications and reports from the student board representatives.
Good evening, everyone. I am thrilled to announce that boys track won the state title last weekend and girls track won runner-up. So that's really exciting. Also, the girls basketball team beat Conard last night. It was 56-49. So we're pretty proud of that. And we have a boys basketball game with Conard on Monday at 5. So we are excited to see what will happen with that. The concert, jazz band, and combo one both received first place awards for their divisions at the National Jazz Festival last Saturday. And on that note, come see Pops and Jazz. Tickets will go on sale at the box office starting on Monday, or you can purchase them at hallhighjazz.com. It's a great show. Come see it, please. Support our arts department. Last week, the Hall Student Government ran a voter registration drive for eligible students, concluding with a visit from the town registrars of voters this afternoon. And in total, we registered about 75 people to vote in the past week, so that's really great. We are excited to announce that, as Mr. Moore said earlier today, that we have 5 finalists for the National Merit Scholarship, and this honor is awarded to students who perform exceptionally on their PSATs in their junior year. So we're proud of them. And as some of us wait in anticipation for college decisions, students are ready to keep on going through quarter 3. Thank you.
Good evening. First, I want to thank Jared from Sandy Hook Promise, who shared his presentation with us on creating a more connected community on February 6th. students during this assembly. It was school-wide. We were able to learn methods on how to approach seeing someone alone and just having that conversation, as simple as like, what is your favorite TV show, and sparking that conversation. As Mr. Moore said earlier, congratulations to John, Jenna, and Xavier, who have been selected as finalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program. A huge thank you to the 8 students who took their time out of their schedule to serve as panelists for the Professional Development Cultural Competence CSI last Wednesday. It was a great opportunity to help students hear our stories and get an understanding from where we come from. From Dr. Nelson's presentation, it was highlighted that it's important for staff to have relationships with their students so that we can feel comfortable going to them when we have an issue. So having them get that perspective from minority students one-on-one, and especially from the ESOL students who had came from Brazil and other countries, it helped the staff to reflect on what they can do to be more successful and help the students be more successful. So that was great. Thursday, which is tomorrow, there's the Community of Concern for Parents, 7 to 8:30 p.m. in room 169. This Saturday, February 22nd, there's a Chocolate Cafe concert here all day at Town Hall from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. Next Tuesday, February 25th, is our Parent Principal Forum from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. Next Wednesday, February 26th, is Historical Figure Day, so acting students will choose a historical figure of their choice, and they will have to act not in the hallways as we did last time, but instead they'll be in their classes acting as that historical figure, so that should be fun. Congratulations to Gavin Sherry for being nominated Connecticut Boys Cross Country Runner of the Year and for winning the Class L 3,200 meter state title and finishing our boys 4x8 relay as state champions. Spring sports registration is now open now that we are coming to a close on our winter season, and our musical is coming up. I'll announce the date at the next meeting. And there are rumors that Mr. Duarte and the APs will be in it, so fun to see them try to remember their lines. Thank you.
And if I could just encourage you to tell your peers back at school that if they're 17 now, but they're going to be 18 by November 3rd, they can vote in the presidential primary on April 28th, which is something not all states do, but Connecticut does allow that. So thank you.
If they register to a party.
Yes, if they're registered with a party. Thank you for that clarification. All right, announcement of future meeting dates. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, March 3rd, where we will have the presentation of the superintendent's budget proposal. That will be at 7 o'clock right here. After that, we have a budget workshop on Wednesday, March 11th, and that will provide us with an opportunity to ask questions about the budget proposal. Following that, we have a regular Board of Education meeting on March 17th, which is Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, March 25th, we have a public hearing where members of the public are encouraged to come and share your thoughts on the superintendent's budget proposal or any other aspect of our West Hartford Public Schools budget so that you can help inform our decisions with your opinions about our programs. And after the public hearing, we will have a second budget workshop right here in this room. So that's the announcement of future meeting dates. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Sean.
Cycling back to another joyous topic, because tonight has been fun, I'll put it that. But I was really interested in the turf athletic field conversation that we had a few meetings ago. And although I guess voted to remove it from the CIP, the capital improvement plan, the idea of it and the conversation I thought needed to be continued. So what I'm requesting in some form is that post budget season, not now, that we maybe get some sort of a State of the Union of our athletic facilities, so that we can see if the turf fields are maybe the most needed at all. I don't know what else to put in this, but basically kind of like a State of the Union of not just the turf fields, but I don't know, maybe the gym or the tennis courts or the pools or whatever else we have going on. I'd like to be informed about such a large investment before we make one, and especially in our fiscal climate. So thank you.
Any other requests? Mark?
Just kind of just made me think of something, Sean. When I joined the board, I actually visited every school. Took quite a while, actually. I don't know, a couple, 3 months. But I visited every school, so I had an appreciation for like potential gym, boiler, linoleum, paint, just things like that. You know, your idea is not bad, but it's also boots on the ground, as we used to like to call it, is that does a lot. And I would encourage the new board members to do it. I know that the old board, I think almost everyone did it, and it was very helpful and eye-opener. And you bring maybe the CIP budget with you, and you say, oh, well, I get it now, right? So it was very, very helpful.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? Okay, great. Are there any visitors who would like to make comments? We have open public comment time, 3 minutes apiece. All right, I don't believe we have any executive session items, and so I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ari. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Lorna. All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Abstentions, ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your patience.